Hi, I'm Stu Kagan, and welcome to Born Scrappy, the podcast for scrap metal exporters and traders. Join me in conversation with some of the most experienced traders and operators that have helped shape this incredible industry. Over the past few months, I've received messages on LinkedIn from people asking me the same questions that I've asked my guests on Born Scrappy. And then the other day, my good friend Michael Goldstein said to me that some people might want to hear my journey and hear me answer some of the questions that I've asked the guests on Born Scrappy. So for the last episode of the season, we decided to interview me. So in this episode, you'll find me on the other side of the microphone. The person doing the interviewing and asking the questions will be my amazing wife and business partner, Lisa. So you'll get to meet her for the first time too. So without further ado, I guess let's hear from me. But first, for the last time this season, intro.
Hi Stu, welcome to Born Scrappy. So excited to have you with us here today. We've been talking about this for quite a while now, and yeah, it's really great to have you in the studio today.
Yeah, it's fantastic to be here. Thank you, Lisa, for having me. I've been looking forward to this for such a long time to get into the Born Scrappy studio. So just thanks for having me and really excited to be here with you.
I guess for those of you who don't know me, my name's Lisa, and I am Stu's better half, and also his business partner. So I thought it would be a good way to end season one, to interview Stu and put him in the hot seat because he's got a bunch of years of experience, and I know that he loves sharing his stories. And yeah, I hope all you listeners out there love listening to them. So yeah, let's get going, Stu.
Um, yeah, I think another thing is we get quite a few DMs, people looking for me to answer a few of the questions that I ask generally in Born Scrappy. So we thought also, well, instead of answering them one at a time, might as well shoot through them all and tell some of my fun stories that have happened and some of my experience, and hopefully some people can gain from it.
Absolutely.
Mm.
So Stu, tell us a little bit about how did you get into scrap in the first place?
So interestingly enough, I wasn't actually born scrappy. I think it was probably in my blood, and when I landed in it at 18 years old, it was the place I was meant to be. But at 18 years old, I needed a job. My stepfather had just become the accountant at a metal recycling company in South Africa, and I became a laborer. So I got a cutting torch, and I was sent about an hour's drive away from where I was living to a place called Stanger in KwaZulu Natal, which is near Durban in South Africa. And I started cutting steel. Luckily for me, there was an amalgamation of the largest metal companies, metal recycling companies in sub-Saharan Africa, which became the Reclamation Group. So through those changes, there were opportunities that arose, I guess. I was always putting my hand up to do new tasks. So if somebody wasn't available to come in on a Saturday, I would happily jump on the weighbridge and learn it as I went. Packing containers, I moved to. I was grading on the non-ferrous scale and slowly but surely progressed and kind of did just about every single role there was before I took over as executive director of that company, where I was accountable for the operations, trading, and strategy for the metal recycling company for that business in South Africa.
I actually experienced that firsthand when we worked together in the industry here in New Zealand. If somebody couldn't do any role or somebody didn't show up or there was someone new and they needed training, it was pretty impressive how you literally could do every single role in that company. And yeah, just really cool working with somebody who's not afraid to get their hands dirty, quite literally sometimes.
It was great for me as well because when we got to New Zealand, when we immigrated here, and we started brand new with no network, and when we started a company, I literally was the only guy. So I was offloading.
I remember I do your washing, so I remember. Your overalls were not fun to wash.
So I was offloading the customers. having to grade them, look after them, and every Sunday I would then run the books and make sure that we were making the margin that we were hoping to make, and the business was moving in the right direction, before it grew to a stage where I would spend a little bit more time trading or in the office. I was able to jump on the floor and do all the hard yards as well.
I remember it well. But yeah, tell us actually what inspired you to start this podcast? What made you start Born Scrappy in the first place?
So Born Scrappy started off as an excuse for me to chat to my friends. I just thought it was a great opportunity for me to stay in contact with a lot of the guys in the industry, or the people in the industry that I had been doing business with for close to 25 years. We exited our company in January of 23. So we were looking for a new venture, not sure what we were going to get into next. And kind of this allowed me to keep the connection going and keep those friendships strong. And I just enjoy people. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy hanging out with people. I enjoy going for dinners and going to conferences and just being around people all the time. So I think the podcast was, if I remember correctly, probably your idea, and was, well, here's a good way for you to carry on speaking to people. You might not have metal to trade on a daily basis, but here's a way to carry on chatting to them and hopefully give back and help, the other younger traders that are coming through learn from those expensive lessons that so many of us have gone through.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting industry because unlike a lot of other industries, there's no vocational path. You can't go to college to be a metal recycler, or an owner operator in a metal recycling operation, or a trader in a metal recycling operation. It really is hard-earned experience, and so I guess the best way to learn is obviously hands-on, and short of that is learning from others who've been there before, so you don't have to repeat their mistakes. So yeah, I really think it's great what you're doing, love.
Thanks. I knew I had a fan out there.
Yeah, I'm your number one fan. I like to think, but I'm open to some of the listeners challenging me. But yeah, it's going to be tough to prove that you're a bigger fan. But anyway, tell us about, over the years, a trade that you've had that has been really tough, where you've had to really dig deep and think outside of the box, and, how you got through that and came out the other side, and what you learned from it.
Obviously, when I ask these questions, I'm thinking of my own trades and things that have been tough for me. But because I'm on the other side of the microphone, I'm engaging with those questions and really relating to the issues other people have had. But one that sticks out for me more than any was during COVID, when we had the real logistics issues, the global supply chain issues that we had. We couldn't get containers out of New Zealand. New Zealand's really far away from the rest of the world. And when there was the lack of freight availability globally, the ships weren't coming to New Zealand. So this became a really big problem for our business. We had built this business up that we were packing a lot of containers a week, and we needed the material to flow because, we had a 12,000 square meter site. So it was a nice size site to handle, I guess, 4,000 to 5,000 tons of ferrous per month. So nothing too big, but just the perfect size for that, as long as it was constantly moving. And we were also doing, close to 1,000 tons of non-ferrous a month as well. So all on the one site. And when we couldn't get containers, all of a sudden the pressure was on, right? We had, you remember it so well, but we had these mountains growing. We were carving out paths for forklifts to drive. It was amazing the support we had in such a short period, because we had only been going for 3 years. And we had all of the scrap coming in, right? All of the metal coming in. And we had, as I say, incredible support from so many people. And we were spoiled and we were blessed to have that. But at the same time, we couldn't sell it. And that was really difficult. So
we could sell it, we couldn't move it.
We could sell it, exactly. We couldn't actually ship it. So we wanted to carry on offering the service to everybody. Nobody wanted to close their doors, but also we had a great relationship with our customers. We had really disrupted the local industry and started paying really strong prices. What we didn't want to do is close our doors and say, sorry, guys, we could be closed for 3 or 4 months. So the way we got around it was we were able to find a forestry vessel, so a bulk ship that was taking logs to South Korea. And I had I'd been selling it to South Korea for 20, 25 years, but predominantly non-ferrous. Not much ferrous, because from South Africa, not a lot of ferrous would go to Korea. But I very quickly had to find a market in South Korea because I had a ship going there. So what I was able to do was to take 2 holds of a ship, which allowed me to pack, I think it was about 9 to 10,000 tons on the vessel. So quickly I had to find a buyer for that material in Korea. And because I hadn't sold much bulk there, and we hadn't gone bulk before as a company,
there were a lot of country.
And
before in New Zealand.
Exactly. We hadn't done it in New Zealand. Exactly. And there was only one other company in the country, large multinational, doing bulk, and one in Wellington who does bulk sporadically. So it wasn't very common practice in New Zealand. So we really had to rally the troops and get the ports to approve us to do these things, to do it on site, to actually store our HMS on at the port. We had to get the freight guys, the transporters, to really come together over a 3 or 4 day period to give us the amount of trucks we needed to cart all the material down to the port. We needed the stevedores on site. But the toughest part of the whole trade, which should resonate with most, is I had to now sell to a new buyer that I hadn't done business with before, right? Because we hadn't gone bulk there. So now it was about me building a relationship very quickly with a large bulk buyer, which I did. But the difficulty was, because it was the first time they were buying from us, they wanted to hold 5% of the total value for after the boat had discharged, right? Or all the material had discharged. So the problem with that was I had never sold like that before. I'd always sold on, bulk on LCs and made sure that you were paid and all the funds were across before they took control of the stock. However, I didn't really have many options. So I was stuck in a situation that I had to actually take this trade, which I did. At the time we took a sale, it ended up being the highest price over about a 2 or 3 year period. I mean, the price was huge, but unfortunately that meant the price plummeted while the shipment was on the water. So the material arrived on the other side, and the buyers fictitiously claimed a massive amount of impurities, something I've never actually seen, before in my 25 years of selling, 2 to 3 bulk vessels a month. Sometimes I'm in South Africa. All of a sudden we did 1 half bulk vessel, third of a bulk vessel, and we had this huge claim. I went over there to fight it during COVID times to get into Korea. It didn't go very well. So there was a lot of learnings from that, but it was a really tough trade. If I look back, I'm not sure what I could have done differently, because they weren't going to buy from me unless they held that 5%. But at the same time, if we didn't sell that on bulk, we didn't have many other options. And the ship was going to South Korea. I couldn't sell it to my friends in India or Pakistan, Bangladesh, or anywhere else. It had to go there. So yeah, that was a pretty tough time. I'm sure you remember it well.
I remember it well. It was super stressful, but yeah, you have to have learned something from it, right? Yes, you can't go back and make a different decision. And even if you could, you probably wouldn't, because that was literally the only option that you sort of manifested out of thin air, because, we had no options really. But what did you learn from that?
I learned that I should have got on a plane earlier. I should have actually been there. Instead of relying on my surveyors, I should have actually been there myself and met with the buyers on site, knowing that the market had crashed, knowing the risk of a claim due to the price drop. I should have actually been there the day of arrival, stood at that port for 3 days, and made sure to negotiate any sort of impurity claim that was going to come with the buyer and myself in person. So if I could go back, that would definitely be what I would do. The cost of a flight and a few days hotel is substantially less than what we lost on that.
Agreed. And I mean, I was quite close to that at the time as well. And I guess what I learned from that is also, the power of those relationships. And I think actually you should have gotten on a plane twice. You should have gotten on a plane before you made the trade, and gotten on the plane when, the ship was arriving. I think that would have been helpful. I don't know. You tell me. That's just what I think.
I think it was hard enough at that time to get on a plane during COVID.
Oh,
But
forgot
if I
about
got
that.
on that,
Hey.
if I got on that, just the cost of a flight, when you look back and you think it's a few $1,000s, might even be $10,000 with flights and whatever it might be, is absolutely nothing compared to the gigantic claim that came our way.
Yeah.
So looking back in hindsight, I should have been there, the one actually assessing the material.
Yeah, for sure. And, Stu, as an owner operator, you've got to make decisions all day long, right? Decisions about the small things, decisions about the big things, decisions about potentially catastrophic things. What is a really tough decision that you've had to make? It could actually be at any stage in your career, but one where you had to really think out the box. You had to, make a hard call, perhaps. Can you talk us through an experience of yours and what you learned there too?
Yeah, I mean, it's spot on. As an owner operator, you are making decisions all day, every day. You're wearing so many hats. And I don't just mean hard hat, peak hat, right? We're talking HR.
You are a man of many hats. I mean, you can see
It's
his
true.
peak caps. I mean,
It's true. I
there's
do
a lot
like
of them.
hats. But yeah, the amount of different sort of decisions you're making on a day. So I've obviously had to make a lot of tough decisions, but I guess the one that stands out for me is a decision that I had to make, which was about the growth of our company in New Zealand. And in order to grow to the size that I knew I wanted to take the company, and the opportunity that was in front of us, I had to go and take on a really large, scary lease. There was a prime piece of property that came up in Onehunga, South Auckland, and it was hella expensive, but there was no better location for a metal recycling yard in the whole of Auckland, if not the whole of New Zealand. And I knew this when I saw it, but just so that everybody understands, at the time we had what we call in some countries a bucket shop. We had a small feeder yard, but we were feeding Sims. We were just a small little scrapyard with massive ambitions. We knew where we wanted to be. We knew we could sell directly to some of the biggest buyers in the world. But in order to do that, you had to have a yard big enough to allow you to pack and store and process, etc. So I had to speak to my investors and get everybody together and tell them that we were about to jump off a cliff, which you and I have done many times together. And I'm very lucky to have you to build the aeroplane on the way down all the time. I like to jump off the cliff. And I went in for the first meeting on that site, and I literally said to them, draw up the papers, we'll take it immediately. This was before I had the investors on board, before we had agreed, before you and I had even agreed to it. And we're talking about a lease of, what was close to $500,000 a year. And that was a big number for, if you looked at the size business and anybody looking in who didn't really know us because we were new in the country anyway, would have said, what are these people doing? And I tell you what, within, say, 6 months of opening, we were full. Like, we had to get tilters quicker. We had to get a second tilter. We had to get more material handlers. We had to get more processing equipment. We had to get more people. Like, it was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. And it just reminds me of that whole idea of fear, right? Like, there's an opportunity there. And the reason why a lot of people don't succeed or don't break through that barrier is fear. But if you take that leap, you often find out, well, it was just in my head. Like, everything else that I felt, including the gut, right? I knew that place was right. I knew that the opportunity was right. I knew what we were doing, and the brand that we were building was different, was disruptive, and it would resonate with the customers that we were aiming to go to target. And we were right. So it was a great decision, but I tell you what, it was a very, very tough decision. Even though I made it really quickly, kind of live and die by the sword, right? I'm happy to make a decision. you often say something about decisions. Remind me what it is again.
Yeah, so there's no such thing as a wrong decision, an objectively wrong decision. You make a decision and you make it right. And another thing that I really am a strong believer in is that a bad decision is better than no decision, because at least you're in motion, and it's easier to steer a ship and turn a ship if it's in motion than if you're standing still to overcome that inertia. So yeah, I think being decisive, but I also think you really are a visionary. Not trying to buddy you up here, but if you saw that site, I mean, I feel like you have to post a picture of that site. It was a mess. You really had to have vision to think that there could be anything at all on that site other than just a complete disaster. And you were also recovering from double knee surgery. I was pretty pregnant at the time, so it was a pretty crazy call just in the overall context. You didn't have the relationships necessarily to bring in all the metal just yet, and yeah. That was a tough call, the right call, for sure. And yeah, good for you for awesome. Jumping off those cliffs. I'm not a cliff jumper personally, so I think
that's exactly it.
That's why it works.
That's why we're a good team.
Yeah, it would be so awkward if no one bought the plane and we just jumped off the cliff.
Talking about collaboration.
Yeah, speaking of collaboration, right? You are a big fan of collaboration, not just in your career and your work, just in general. You love people. You love being a part of a team. Whether it's sports, whether it's social, whatever it is. Can you talk to us a bit about some collaboration that you've done in the industry or in your career, what you did, and how it was really beneficial that you formed that collaboration?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously speak about this a lot. It's something that I want our community to do more of. It's what I want our industry to do more of. Reach out to each other, connect with each other, realize that we're not all against each other, right? We're one massive team. And if we go in the same direction, we'll achieve some great things. So I love collaborating with demolition companies, right? So for me, a really big thing we did when we started our company was build relationships with demolition companies. So, and that includes going with them to quote on site, right? They always, I think, appreciate an extra person to help estimate the volumes of metals on site. And, having somebody who's been doing it for 25 years and worked on a lot of demolition site is really helpful for them. So I collaborate a lot with our customers. And that can be, you could say the demolition. I mean, we won Service Provider of the Year for the demolition industry in New Zealand because of how proactive we were in actually working with them and helping them tender accurately, I guess it is. Plus, we paid them really strong prices in the market so that they could pay for more jobs instead of charging for more jobs. So yeah, that was something we did. There was a lot of collaboration in that. But also, I often looked at large tenders when I was in South Africa and sub-Saharan Africa. And sometimes what you find is the tender goes out and it needs you to have a physical yard or a physical location in every single town that they're in, or that the tender is, there's going to be metal available in, and you might not have that. Now, that can often leave only one party to be able to tender. But instead of allowing that to happen, we would reach out to the local metal recycler in those areas and say to them, if you can service this on our behalf, we will obviously pay you a premium, and this will bring good margin for you. And this can be a collaboration between the two parties. Often it was more than two parties. You might have to have 3 or 4 different parties in different locations, but it allowed us to be able to tender on just about anything that came our way because we had strong relationships with other metal recyclers throughout the region.
Yeah, and I suppose when it comes to tenders, they're really specific, especially a lot of these large multinationals, in terms of what they'll accept. And so if the bar is here, you have to at least meet that bar. So yeah, I can see how collaboration is a great solution in terms of tendering. I guess in any industry actually, but yeah, particularly for this. Stu, I'm actually really interested to hear about your career highlights, right? I see you like every day. And this is kind of the sort of zooming out kind of conversation that, I've never asked this to you before. So yeah, I'm really interested. What are your career highlights or your biggest career highlight, and what got you there?
Yeah, what got me there? So, you know, I've got a lot of career highlights. I'm very lucky to have had a blessed career. It started off really tough. I say tough. I wouldn't have changed. I would right now not change anything about my career. Um, I'm extremely excited about the position I'm in right now, even though certain periods have been extremely tough. When we talk about maybe my favorite quote and my favorite book, I might talk about what helps you get through those periods. But if you
Stay with
decide
me
to
here,
ask that
Stu.
question, I don't know if you would ask that question or not, but we'll see if it comes up.
Sam, what's up?
I have watched some of the shows, so I know some of the questions you might ask. But some of the highlights for me would have been, I guess, becoming a shareholder of the company in South Africa, which was the largest metal recycling company in sub-Saharan Africa. So becoming a shareholder there was a massive highlight for me, as well as becoming an executive director there. There were only 5 executive directors on the board, and I was one of them at a young age of, I think, 30 years old or 31 years old. So um, those are massive highlights for me. Obviously, the company that you and I built from scratch in New Zealand is a massive highlight. I mean, we took this company, which we literally built from scratch with no network at all, to win the best emerging business and the supreme winner at the New Zealand Westpac Awards. So those were some huge awards. Obviously, I said we won the service provider of the demolition industry. Um, we were also the fastest growing company in New Zealand within our first 4 years. So these sort of things were really exciting. However, right, I'm going to say that my career highlight has not yet happened. And let me clarify,
The
because
best is yet to come.
yeah, exactly. And I don't mean that I'm still young and there's a lot to come. Absolutely. But everything that's happened so far has brought me to where I am now and to what's coming very, very soon for what you and I are busy building right now for this industry. And I think April in Las Vegas at ISRI will be the highlight of my career when we launch Buddy, um, which is a company that you and I are building together. And it's really something that we believe is going to help and add huge amount of value um, to the users and our industry as a whole. So that I think is going to be the highlight. And if I look back and I go, well, wasn't the previous metal recycle? Would I say the same? No, this is so different, and this really is going to be the highlight of my career.
Yeah, I think this is a culmination of all your skills, as well as the combination of my skills, all your experience. And yeah, I think that, it feels like what you were born to do, actually. Is that a bit dramatic?
Yeah,
I don't
wow.
know. Born scrappy, born buddy. It doesn't have the same ring to it, but yeah. Okay, yeah, well, I'm looking forward to April and seeing what you got there under the hood. Um, Stewie, you have, traded a lot of material. You mentioned, I think you said sometimes 2 bulk vessels a month back in Africa. What tips do you have to help exporters optimize their trading strategy?
A couple of things that stand out for me is not speculating. It's a massive thing for me. Somebody mentioned they like to sleep at night. Absolutely, I like to sleep at night. When I'm not trading on
Yeah,
WhatsApp all
exactly.
night, then I'm sleeping at night. So that means for everybody outside of the US, it's also hedging the currency. So it's locking in your currency at the time of trade, making sure that you've got your sale. Therefore, you've taken a floating price or an unknown price and made it a fixed price so that your margin is absolutely known. I also like to buy against the sale. So I'm a big believer in selling up front and then buying against it. You do have to buy sometimes aggressively to make sure that you fill your orders in time. And there are times when it can get tough, and sometimes you have to give away a lot of your margin to fill those boxes. And other times, the market goes your way, and you can make a
Swings and
bigger margin.
roundabouts.
But I don't like to be unsold. So I don't like to be buying material. I have my buyers out there on the road, price their prices, beginning of the week, and they're out buying, and the market moves, and all of a sudden everything they bought for the week we're now losing money on. So I always like to have everything sold beforehand.
I actually just
Other
assumed that was standard practice in the industry. And when I started doing some market validation for Buddy, I was quite surprised that a lot of people don't actually do that. I mean, it's a strategic choice, I guess, to do that. So yeah, I was quite interested to find out that some people buy and then they go out and they market what they've bought and then sell it, as opposed to doing it the other way around. So yeah, many ways to skin a cat.
We could probably talk about just this for hours, and I could tell you a whole lot about how the reasons, pros and cons on both sides, and why it's not necessarily so easy. It depends on how much volume you're doing. If it's a commodity that you buy very little of and might take you 2 months to fill a container, then you can't really sell up front because it's taking you too long. Your latest shipment date would come earlier. So a couple of things you've got to tiptoe through, and it doesn't mean you should be selling everything up front, but certain of your more common commodities you would. Then the other thing is I always say shop around on freight. Like, freight plays a huge part of our business, and a lot of the time you'd be selling through one freight forwarder and just sticking to that same freight forwarder. And for whatever reason, either they're opening their margins or they aren't necessarily as competitive as they were previously. It's worth often just double checking, not just with the shipping lines, but actually with your freight forwarders as well. So I say always make sure that you're competitive on that side as well, and keep your finger on that pulse, because we all have shipping administrators who are often doing that stuff for us. It's worth just maybe asking them every month or every second month to get you some comparative rates, to just make sure that you are always getting the right freight rate. I guess one of the other things for me is offering to multiple markets. So you've got to constantly make sure that you're offering to the different regions. You never know. I mean, you can stay abreast, but it's really hard to know everything that's going on. So it's worth, if you're selling 2-3 commodities a day, it's worth always checking, into the different areas, whether you're offering it into India, Pakistan, you might be offering it into Europe as well, maybe offering it into South Korea, maybe into China, Vietnam, Thailand, wherever you might be offering it, offer it, I believe, into at least 5 people to make sure that you know where the competitive price is coming from at that time. And the last thing I think for me is to really optimize your trading strategy is to be fair, right? So with these claims that are always going to come, and with the quality that you said, but be firm. So it's okay. You fair but firm, I think, is really, really important in our industry.
I feel like that's how you parent. Would you say that's fair?
And firm.
Yeah. So you mentioned back there freight, right? Freight can be a big influencing factor where you're selling to. And I know that when we moved to New Zealand, you sold, when we started our metal recycling company, to a lot of the buyers you'd been dealing with for many years, but there were also obviously new markets that didn't make sense because of the cost of freight when you're living in South Africa that now made sense. And I remember you having to find a couple of new buyers as well to sell to, to take advantage of some of those good freight rates. When dealing with a new buyer, what should people be looking out for there?
So I love the idea of using new buyers. People come into the market. Sometimes they can come in and strong, and they have some sort of niche. And I think we spoke to Dalwal Shah the other day, and we were talking about how the niche foundries in India like smaller parcels. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the bigger player is always going to pay the right price. It's about making sure you're getting to know who the best price are at any time, and often that is going to be a new buyer. So for me, when communicating with a new buyer, it's really important to discuss your payment terms up front. So understanding when the ownership changes hands, right? So the control of the metal. So know that you'll be receiving payment in full before they take control of the material. And that's, to me, absolutely vital. It's what I wasn't able to do in that earlier story with the bulk vessel to Korea. And that is something that I really would emphasize, that you should always make sure that your early payment, and any new buyer would understand the situation, and they might send a surveyor or somebody to come and watch to make sure what's being loaded is correct. And I understand from their side as well, but both parties have to feel comfortable. And that, for me as a seller, that's how I would recommend you feel most comfortable, is you receive payment before they take control of the goods. And for a buyer, I guess, if you want to do business with somebody for the first time and you don't trust it's the right quality, they'll be willing to let you oversee their loading if you wish. So I guess that's really important. Obviously, do your homework, know your counterparty, know them as best as you can, find out who they've done business with. They should be very comfortable. Everybody that messages me says, oh, I buy from EMR, I buy from Sims. They're always willing to tell you, but then ask them who you can speak to at that company to confirm it. And if they can't give you a name, you might have a bit of an issue. But you'll find that anybody who is actually doing business with these companies won't have an issue for you to for them to tell you, I deal with Murat at EMR. Feel free to call him and ask him what he thinks of me. And start small. I mean, we all know everybody usually starts with
Elmo.
Everybody starts with a box of Elmo. Let's try it out, and it arrives, and let's see if there's any claim, and let's see if they pay on time, and how did the process go. So start small, make sure your payments are right, and make sure that you keep ownership of their metal until payments are in full.
Yeah, those are some good tips. Thank you. And, Stu, when you were in South Africa, you had a lot of volume that you were moving, and you came here, and let's be honest, when we started exporting, we had really small volumes, okay? Had to start somewhere. And so how did you become a preferred supplier and get that preferential pricing to help us disrupt the market? And I'm asking in the sense that, how can other exporters perhaps replicate some of what you did to become a preferred supplier?
I was very lucky. I mean, I always used to say to people here that I'm not brilliant. I just happen to know the biggest buyers in the world and happen to have sold to them in the company that I was at previously. So, but to answer your question, yes, I was a preferred supplier for a lot of them, for a lot of these buyers. And that was because I'd like to think it was how I treated them and how we acted during difficult times. Because when you've traded with somebody for that long and done that amount of volume, they really get to know you and they start to know how you act when things go badly. And that's what everybody's looking for. Everybody wants to know, should they do business with you? Because if things go bad, will you honor your agreement, or are you going to, are we going to have issues? So I say communication. Over the period of my trading when I was in South Africa, I communicated a lot. This is pretty much mostly before WhatsApp. Lots and lots of phone calls, lots of text messages, jokes, and lots of communication. I dealt with claims very fairly. And I don't know if it is because I spent so much time in the yard that I can actually understand that as a trader, I've told the yard to pack such and such, but I've been in the yard and I know what happens in the yard. That by accident, they've loaded the raw, incorrect material that was on that corner of that pile. They weren't meant to, but they've put that in by mistake, right? Yeah. Those sort of issues happen in the yard, and I was able to negotiate claims quite fairly, I believe. I also had a relationship with a lot of these people because I'd visited them. So I traveled extensively with the company. I'd gone to see their facilities. So I knew, first of all, I knew what they were looking for and what they were not looking for. But I had gone for dinners with these people and really built those relationships. Now, not everybody can travel extensively because they have businesses to run, but that's where the events and the conferences come in.
Yeah.
You're able to see 20 of your buyers over a 2-day period, at the BIR, and go to a beautiful place like Copenhagen at the same time. Or, if it's Israel, a lot of the buyers go out there as well. Wherever it might be, you have those opportunities to be able to visit and build that relationship. And then the last thing I would say is, if you can get your yard and your people to take pride in their quality, the buyer wants your metal, right? And I think I had this conversation with Jürgen van Gorp. I remember when he would get phone calls from his guys who received the metal, and they would go, wow, this material is brilliant. And he'd phone me and he'd go, wow, Stu, this stuff's amazing. But I would also get those phone calls that said, Stu, what the heck did you just load in this container, right? So different yards pack different material. But the fact is they know. So the buyers are seeing that material and you are getting graded. You are getting known as a supplier of good material or bad material. And when the proverbial shit hits the fan, unfortunately, when you're loading not good material, you don't have a market to sell to. So those are the kind of things that I believe are will make you a preferred supplier and will keep you up there for as long as you keep that up.
Yeah, for sure. Stu, you are about 25 years in the industry. And I mean, you've seen a lot of different things transform over time. How has the industry changed in ways that you've sort of witnessed over this
time? Sorry, 1 second. Hello? Don't know if the kids are the kids out?
They're on the loose. They're both,
okay.
Yeah. So, Stu, you've been around in the industry for a wee while. How have you seen the industry change over that period?
Yeah, it's changed. I mean, I wasn't there during Telex, like Michael Lyon was telling us about, but I was there when everything was
machine.
I was there for the fax machine.
Giving your age away here, but yeah.
I was there, but we didn't do trading with the fax machine. Everything was on email. And I remember, this wasn't long ago. I mean, so this isn't a drastic change, but I remember when we started using WhatsApp, there was somebody who ran the trading team with me. The two of us ran the trading team in South Africa. And he was completely against any communication on WhatsApp. He just said that there were too many issues with it. You know, we didn't then both know what was happening, whereas on emails, we could copy each other in. If there was any issues at a later date, how can we prove that they had said these things? And even though I was trying to say to him, but, you know, I'm building a relationship here. And sometimes at night, we're not just talking about what's being sold, but actually we're talking about sport that's on, whatever it might be. And he used to get really angry, and he was so against it. It's funny looking back now because it's all everybody uses, and I'm pretty sure when something else comes up, it'll be the same, right? There's always going to be those that kind of not just fear change, but don't believe that it's there to help them, or it's not for people like us. And yeah, so that's kind of, you know, from when everything was on emails. I mean, we had 85 yards through sub-Saharan Africa, and each region we had to phone every single morning to find out what the inventory was that they needed to sell. You know, those days are gone now with decent ERP systems. But we used to phone, you know, the morning would start with the same phone calls every single morning. And, you know, those guys that I used to phone would be laughing right now, and they remember, you know, having their coffee, and I would phone and say, what do you want to sell today?
Groundhog Day.
Every day was Groundhog Day. Every day was, what do you want to sell today? Okay, you've got a box of birch cliff and 2 tainter boars, and I'd write it all down on a piece of paper.
Illegibly, no doubt.
Pardon me?
Illegibly, no doubt.
Illegibly, yeah. My handwriting, my handwriting isn't amazing.
Yeah.
So I would write it all down and then correlate it all together and say, okay, today we're selling, you know, 8 boxes of birch cliff, 15 boxes of tainter on a daily basis, and then it would be, now I'm going to send an email out to all my different agents and all the buyers around the world and wait for them to wake up, for them to come back to me. Or maybe some of them were already going to bed because we were in South Africa. So, you know, the East was going to bed already in our morning. So that's changed. That's changed a lot. But I expect that is going to change a lot more.
So I just want to pause over there and say that I just think it's really ironic that like this massive change has moved to WhatsApp. Was a really big change in the industry, because when we started working together, I was like, what do these people think it is that they're trading on WhatsApp? There's better ways to do this. Come on, guys. And I actually, for a long time, thought it was just you, that, you know, you weren't in on the secret. there was a better way, you know. So yeah, so I guess that leads me into, you know, what do you think the industry is going to look like 10 years from now? Are you guys still going to be trading in WhatsApp for a start?
So let's start with what it's going to look like, right? Yeah. So what it's going to look like is there's going to be government intervention. We all are aware of that. Every single person that I interview speaks about that. So it's about making sure that we're ahead of the game, that we know what's happening. We know the changes that are being made. We also need to try and involve ourselves and get a seat at the table to ensure that these decisions that are being made have the best outcome, and have the actual outcome that they're hoping for, but maybe don't understand the situation as well. So we need to have a seat at the table. And I think over time, we're going to find that our industry is going to grow. Our industry is going to be better. It's going to have a much better reputation. We're slowly going to be known for what we actually do. People start to realize the importance we play. You know, John Sacco's Repurposed is fantastic.
Yeah.
How many people have we told to watch it, right? Whether
Yeah, I love
it's investors or whatever it is, friends, and they're watching, they can't believe it, right? But we don't need to harp on that, right? But the industry is going to change for the better, I do believe. And then you say, oh, we're going to still be using WhatsApp, right? So I think in general, technology globally is moving at a rapid rate. I mean, there's no question. It's affecting every single industry worldwide. You then throw in AI, and there's just so much, I mean, there's so much more that can be achieved.
Yeah.
You take all the mundane tasks that we do in our industry, and if you can just bring in a bit of efficiency, bring in some digitization into those tasks, it will have a massive effect on us. But we are dinosaurs. We don't like to learn new technology. I'm throwing me in this because I'm the exact same, right? Until I see the value. So throw Uber at me and I want to learn it, because whenever I'm somewhere I need to get a taxi, like, it's just so much easier, right?
The motivation's there.
Exactly. So when these technologies are built for our industry, and I say for our industry because I don't believe tech people can build for our industry. They just don't have the know-how. They don't know what's important to us. When our industry has something built specifically for it, I believe there will be change. I'm very excited about it. I think it's going to help a lot of people. So yeah, I think there will be a huge amount of change. But then you throw in relationships, right? And if we start saying, well, we want to make change, and we believe that, well, how are you going to keep a relationship if you're going to try and bring technology into it? Well, the whole point is that any new technology has to add value and be aligned with, some of our key, our most vital parts of our industry, which is relationships are key. So what we want is we want to keep those relationships, but we want technology to assist us and actually make our tasks more efficient, give us more time back, give us processes, those sort of things that are easy to understand and really easy to use, but allow us to keep our relationships, because what we're selling are not widgets. What we're selling is gray, and I want to make sure that I know my counterparty really well.
Yeah.
100%. So I think change is coming, no doubt, globally in everything that there's change coming. So I don't think we'll be any different. And if you said to me, are we still going to be trading on WhatsApp in the next 5 years? I'd say you must be crazy if you think we are. Yeah. Who knows what it is, but none of us saw WhatsApp coming, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The value was there, people adopted, and the rest was history.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You speak to a lot of people on Born Scrappy in your DMs on LinkedIn, and just generally. Who do you think are the people that we should be keeping an eye on in this industry, because they're doing some really interesting, awesome, inspiring, different kind of things?
So we've got the usual that get mentioned on the show. George Adams does amazing things, and SA is just at another level. So you have to keep watching what he's doing, because it's really exciting and inspiring what he's built. John Sacco, we touched on it earlier, Repurposed. So John's awesome. He really is. And he's seriously the most authentic guy. When I meet him in person, he's just really warm and a really good person. So watching John do what John does is just really exciting and inspirational. I love seeing his posts on a daily basis. It kind of motivates me to go.
I like his
You can't miss the Shepherds from EMR. You've got to keep watching them. They're super inspirational, and what they've been building over all these years is just great. It's incredible what they've built, and no doubt that's not stopping anytime soon. And then I've got my, the go-tos, which is the daily Brett Eckhart, who definitely keep an eye on Brett. He does awesome things.
Yeah, always doing something new and exciting.
Yeah, and I've seen his plans for 2024, and they're big, hairy, audacious goals, and
no doubt he's going to smash them.
Yeah, exactly. So Brett's really cool to keep an eye on.
Of
And
course,
then
Jen, when we're talking about Brett, Brett and Jen, they're
absolutely
doing a
right.
bit of
So
work together
Jen,
there. She's doing some awesome, awesome stuff.
yeah, that's Jen Betts. She's phenomenal. And then my great friend, who I've never met, Michael Goldstein, he's
I'm starting to feel
become,
like a third wheel with Mike. I'm just saying.
yeah, exactly. He's becoming more prominent and getting involved on social media, and I absolutely love his posts, and I love speaking to him, whether it's on WhatsApp or video calls and catching up. And so keep an eye on him. He'll one day be running Alta Trading, and Alta just does incredible stuff. So yeah, he's definitely also one to keep an eye on.
And Jess, of course, our kids love her book. We haven't got your second book yet, but the girl who recycled a million cans, I think that's what it's called. It's called, right? Yeah, with the unicorn
Yeah,
on the cover. So that's also somebody, at Scrap University and the books, also doing a lot of that space and just such a genuine passion for the
yeah.
industry and recycling and the planet. Um, and when I first joined the industry, I was really interested in following the Padnos story. I just find those guys really impressive. Do things a little bit differently, quite innovative and progressive. So yeah, I've really enjoyed watching their journey as somebody who's much newer to the industry.
But I guess if you throw Padnos in, then you also would say Cass
Yeah,
does phenomenal things.
yeah,
And then you bring in culture, and you can't miss Sod.
yeah,
I mean, Sod is what they've built with that team, and just watching that journey is great to watch. So for many different reasons, people will watch different people, right? And I think we
yeah.
really have covered quite a lot of them. Whether
Different
you're looking at
areas.
how can you fix the culture in your company or build a great culture, then you want to follow the SAR team, right? If you're looking for somebody to inspire you on a daily basis, somebody to make sure that you keep hustling, then you read Brett's posts on a daily basis. You've got George Adams doing those things. You've got John, all these people. So depending what you're into, I think we've covered quite a big base of them.
I think what you're saying there is no shortage of amazing people doing great stuff in the industry, and there's all these pockets of inspiration, or whatever it is that you're looking to do. So yeah,
Exactly.
Stu,
Yep.
I'd love to chat to you all day, and I can, I can, and but we're running out of time here. And so, what I like to do on the show is, I like to ask you a couple of personal questions so that if somebody meets you at a conference, one of the many conferences you're going to be traveling to this year, they can say, hey, oh, you watch the show? That's awesome. Me too. Just so they get to know a little bit about you. So, if you will, humor me a bit. I've got a few short questions and then we can wrap this thing up. So, what is your favorite TV series or movie?
Oh, wow. I wasn't expecting this question.
I'm answering it in my head just to see how well I know you. But go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So my favorite show was Super Pumped. It's the Uber story.
Yeah.
So the story of Travis Kalanick and how he built Uber, and just really getting into the weeds with them and understanding how crazy, he had to be founder crazy, they call it, to have built what he built. And then obviously, there was a time for him to get off the plane, but great story. So I love Super Pumped. And then my favorite movie, which is, I don't think anybody would see this coming, is a musical, and it's called The Greatest Showman, with Hugh Jackman. And it's the story about P.T. Barnum and how he created the circus. And yes, it's a musical, and I absolutely love it. And I know all the words to the songs, and I sing it with my kids, right? And the moves. But what's really cool is it's a story of entrepreneurship. Yeah. I mean, what P.T. Barnum went through to build the circus is phenomenal. So if you're an owner operator or an entrepreneur or an inspiring entrepreneur one day, even if you think, musicals aren't for you, just have a watch of that movie, and it should inspire you. I can't lie that every now and then I put some of the music on my car just to kind of motivate me for the next venture coming up. So,
that's awesome.
But then, I mean, the thing is that both of those kind of touch on entrepreneurship. I absolutely love watching with you movies and shows on, true business stories, whether they end really badly or end really well. Things like We Crashed, which is the story about WeWork. We watched Tetris together, which is
Tetris
a crazy story. Obviously, the Theranos story, and things like Air, which are obviously a lot more people have seen, which is the story about Jordan Nike Jordans. And that's all. Those are the kind of shows that I absolutely love watching. So if anybody has any good ideas or any of those that I might have missed, please shout out and let me know.
Tell me something. You've traveled a fair amount in your time in your career, and just generally, what would you say is your favorite place to visit?
No doubt, the bush. So for me, we got married there in the middle of the bush with no fences, with a couple of rangers around with rifles in case there were any elephants or lions. But the peacefulness of going on safari, being in the middle of the bush, it's not just about seeing the big five. It's about having that chill, that time out there. There's no phones, there's no iPads, there's no laptops. It's just kind of you chilling with people that you love. I often tell friends of ours that I recommend they one day take either their elderly parents or teenage kids on a safari for a week or so, because it's the kind of quality time that I don't believe you can get many other places. You're forced to talk, you're forced to bond, you're forced to engage because there's nothing else. And yes, it does take a day or two for you to actually calm down and be able to actually take it all in. But once you're in that zone, it's a great place to be. So yeah, we miss it a lot, obviously, living in New Zealand. But when the boys are a little bit older, that's where we'll be going.
For sure. Favorite book? I know you're a big bookworm. I don't know if everyone knows that about you, but Stu is never not reading or listening to a book. So yeah, what's your favorite, man?
Favorite, similar to the movies that I watch. Favorite book is probably Shoe Dog. Shoe Dog is the story of Phil Knight and how he built Nike, and it's just awesome. It's awesome listening to pretty wild, like another entrepreneur and some guy who's been on this crazy journey. And if you try to put yourself in his shoes, probably Nikes, but if you put yourself in his shoes and understand in the beginning days, like he didn't know where he was going to end up, and he still made these crazy calls. And it's a phenomenal story. So I love that. It also depends on what mood I'm in and where I am in my life. So like Shoe Dog's great. I love The Obstacle is the Way, which is a book by Ryan Holiday.
All his books actually are classic.
His books are brilliant. Focus on stoicism. Obstacle is the Way is pretty much exactly what it says. It's about getting through difficult periods in your life and realizing that what is the obstacle becomes the way, and often success. In order to get the success that you want, you have to go through obstacles, and they seem like obstacles and big boulders in your way, but they're actually getting you to where you need to go. So Obstacle is the Way. I've read it many times. As soon as I have any sort of difficulties going on, I pick up that book, and even if I read just a few chapters of it. An industry book I love, which I told Darwell Shaw about the other day, is Cold Steel. Yeah. So if you haven't read it, it's really great. It's the Lakshmi Mittal story, and we all know of Mittal, and if you read it, it's brilliant. It's written like a thriller. Yeah. It's just really exciting, and it's a true story. So really, really awesome. And then anybody building a business, I'd have to recommend Jim Collins' Good to Great. Yeah. So those are probably my go-tos.
Nice. Okay, we're going to wrap this up with your favorite quotes.
Favorite quote is probably the book that I just mentioned, which is The Obstacle is the Way. So many times I've used it. So many times it's been important to me. But similar to books, quotes depend on what you're feeling at the time. So, The Obstacle is the Way, which is Marcus Aurelius. Great quote for going through difficult times. And then I also absolutely love The Man in the Arena by Theodore Roosevelt. It's longer than most little quotes, but if you spend a few seconds or a minute or two and just sit down and read it, it's really powerful. It's powerful in many, many ways. The Man in the Arena is a fantastic quote, and it's something that if you know what I mean.
I'll give it to you.
Thank you. It's really powerful, and I absolutely love it.
Well, Stu, it has been awesome having you on Born Scrappy today, getting to know you just that little bit better. And thanks for your time, and have a good eve. I can't wait to see you in a couple seconds, actually.
Thank you for having me, Lisa. This has been fantastic. I absolutely love being a part of Born Scrappy, so thank you. It's been very exciting.
Take care.
Bye.